Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 7th, 2021 agenda and workshop regular meeting of the Somerville Board of Education. At this time, would everybody please rise for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Boyce, can you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Matthews.
Here.
Mr. Carlson is absent. Mrs. Olson is absent. Mr. Pontillo.
Here.
Mrs. Kraska.
Here.
Mr. Jess.
Here.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes, present, sir.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Here.
Mr. Kimmick.
Here.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyce. We have a quorum. So public notice, adequate notice of this meeting in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 entitled the Open Public Meetings Act has been provided by action of the Board of Education at its regular meeting on August 17, 2021. Notices to the Courier News and the Star Ledger circulated in the school district, and a posted notice to this effect on the Board of Education website and building bulletin board, administrative headquarters, 51 West Cliff Street, Somerville, New Jersey. Okay, at this time we invite public comment on any matter related to agenda items. So any members of the public who are present that would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Ms. Matthews, I believe.
Second, sir.
Second?
Second, sir.
Oh, Mr. Shigil, I didn't know you were here. Mr. Shigil? It's a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, approval of the minutes. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the minutes of the Board of Education meeting as follows. November 9, 2021, regular meeting.
So moved.
There's that's a
Second.
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 So Ms. Van Horn is a second. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce, can you do a roll, please?
Yes. Ms. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Pontillo.
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick.
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Okay, great. And moving on to the Board President's Report. So just a good evening to everybody again. Thank you for everybody who's in attendance tonight. I want to welcome you to this meeting. We have a really full agenda this meeting, so I'll keep my comments somewhat brief because we have a number of presentations that are taking place. I do want to comment that each school's Educator of the Year recipients were recently announced by the Board of Education. You know, there was a whole lot of activity in terms of flowers being presented and special presentations that have taken place in the buildings. Dr. Tina's going to talk about this in a little bit more detail in his remarks, but on behalf of the board, I want to congratulate all of this year's recipients. It is really something that I think is quite an honor when you're acknowledged in this way, and really is something that your peers are involved in that process. And we really know this highlights educators who are innovative, they're passionate, they're focused on student success, and we know that we have so many teachers within the district that really keep that as the focus of their work on a daily basis, and that those people that were recipients this year just exemplify, you know, that commitment to students and commitment to the district. So I just want to congratulate all of those people, and Dr. Tina will go into a little bit more detail on just the names and the building locations. I also want to point out that Mr. Carlson, whose seat is over here, he's not here right now. His term ends at the end of this month. You know, again, this is something that would have been his last meeting, and really on behalf of the board, I want to extend thanks and appreciation to Mr. Carlson for serving on the board. He chaired our finance committee. He volunteered and dedicated his time in many ways, and it's really been a pleasure serving with him because I think he was always a voice of reason. He took a unique perspective in terms of the work that he did, and it's a huge commitment when you serve on a board, and even though he's not here, I just want to make sure that we publicly acknowledge that how much the community appreciates his work and how much we all appreciate his work. And finally, we are just really immersed in the holiday season right now. Mr. Jess's attire over here, I think, really points that out to us. I want to extend a belated happy Thanksgiving to everybody, a happy Hanukkah to people that celebrated Hanukkah, and Merry Christmas and a happy holidays to the entire school community. I know that Thanksgiving for my family was just a little bit more normal this year. We were able to enjoy company. We were able to, I think, see people that we have not seen in quite a while. You know, that's something I think that we're all thankful for as a community. On behalf of the board, I just wish everybody a very happy holiday season, and really hope that everybody is able to spend time with loved ones, get that opportunity to do something extra special this year, and just be grateful for everything that we have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Tien for the superintendent's report.
Okay, we're going to start off by having Mr. Steve Wyman step up and talk about Hurricane Ida volunteer recognition.
Thank you, Dr. Tien. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Steve Wyman, and I'm the Director of the Office of Emergency Management here in Somerville. And we had, as we all know, we're devastated about 3 months ago as the remnants of Hurricane Ida came through Somerville and really caused historic flooding and displacement of many of our residents. It wasn't something that we had predicted. It wasn't something we saw coming, but as it happened, the community pulled together and the community persevered. And central to being able to persevere and make it through the storm was the support of the Board of Education. Over the course of about 5 days, the Board of Education pulled together, assisted the Office of Emergency Management in setting up reception centers, sheltering centers, and I think over 45 staff of the Board of Ed stepped up and gave of their time to help over about 75 residents that were displaced. So I did not want this meeting this year to end without my coming before and publicly thanking the Board of Ed, Dr. Tien, all the administrators, the Board of Ed, yourselves, the staff, faculty of the school district for all of the hard work that went into really making sure that our residents and our children were well taken care of. It's a small token of appreciation, but I'll present a packet of certificates tonight that'll go to all of the staff members that assisted us and really did a stalwart job of helping us out over that 4-day period that we hope we never see again. And but you know, we're Somerville. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It takes a Ville, and the Ville came together. And again, my heartfelt thanks on behalf of the Borough of Somerville and the Office of Emergency Management for the work that your staff did in helping us out.
I want to thank you for all the work you've done, and I know you are retiring.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that, because you have been really, really good to work with.
Thank you very much. It's been a phenomenal relationship. I know that the individual who's taking my place will carry on that legacy very well, and we're in good hands, and we've got a phenomenal partnership. So again, thank you all for your time tonight, and again, thank you for all that you've done for the staff and for everything that's gone on over the past 7 years. So
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, next up is Valerie Dolan. She's going to do our audit presentation.
I'm just gonna sleep over this way in this corner.
Wherever you
so
want.
You can hear me. So everyone can hear me a little bit better, and on my back to anybody. I just want to say once again, it was a pleasure to complete the audit. We were in the business office, made it run very smoothly for us, as they always do. Brian does a fantastic job, and his staff are putting together financials that make it very easy for us to come in and get through all of our procedures. Just to give you a little quick refresher on your audit, obviously you have both of your, everybody has their hardcover books, and there's a small gray book. That the first book is the larger book, which is your CAFR. It has 4 sections. An introductory section, which has some general information about the district. There's a very large financial section, which has several sets of financial statements, and as we say, there are 3 sets of accounting records within these financial statements. There is a third section, which is the statistical section, which is actually a very informative section. It's 10 years worth of information. And it's 10 years worth of financial information, 10 years worth of enrollment. There's information about the County of Somerset. There's information about the Borough of Somerville, all included in that section. And then lastly, there is a section on the single audit, which is compliance with all of your grant requirements. That being said, this whole big book, we always say that the most important, there's like 14 pages that are probably the most important within this book, which is your C1 schedule, which if you want to have the information, it starts on page 92, and it runs through this book. That walks you through your budget. That is your budget. That's everything that you have. It's your revenues planned versus where they land. And when we go through that whole process of your reviewing your budget for the revenues and the appropriations, we land with where you land in your fund balance picture, which is the most important thing at the end of the day, is how did the district do? So the district ended the year with a little over, just under $15.5 million in what we refer to as fund balances and reserves. That number then gets broken into large numbers of different things. You have about $8.9 million in your capital reserve, of which 2.1 is being used in the year that you're currently already in right now. There's about $250,000 in a maintenance reserve. New to this year, there's about $330,000 of unemployment, which is under GASB 84, which is a new standard, requires us to transfer that money now into the general fund, where previous years it was reported in a different fund in the financials. So that was captured as part of your numbers. You have about a little over $1 million in tuition reserve, which will be used to support the budget that you're in, and an additional another $1 million for the next coming budget year. You have about $250,000 worth of encumbrances that were unfunded and unpaid by the end of June, and they get carried into the current budget year. And then you have what this year uniquely, you have about 1.89 in fund balance as unreserved. That's different this year, and normally in prior years, it's been a 2% calculation. But due to COVID, the state has given you a 2-year 4% allocation to give you the benefit of the district of having some additional funds in your unreserved numbers in case there's additional expenses or unforeseen things that a district might have. After the completion of next year's audit, it will revert back at the end of, in the 3rd year, back to the 2% that you've always carried. Which, when you take all those out, that leaves us with the infamous number of the excess surplus. That number is just under $600,000 at $590,000, and that's sort of the basis for you to start, and that will be used when you build your 22-23 budget. Additionally, in the financials, about $3.4 million ran through the funds in form of federal, state, and local grants in the district. That includes some of the CARES money and some of the COVID money, but the larger pieces we anticipate to start seeing being spent in the coming next 2 years under your large ESSER funds. Your food service continued to see a decline in its surpluses that it has. Fortunately, you've had a surplus that you can manage. That really comes down to you're operating under every student is getting a meal. So as a result, that money everybody's eating, there's no real paid, everybody's available to get lunches. So really that's finances in a nutshell. Like I said, you're in great shape, things are doing well. Now, when I look at the management report, this year we do have one small item of a recommendation. It's in an area of student activities, which is an area that most districts see recommendations come and go in this area. It's removed from the business office, hence the reason sometimes we see these recommendations. So really, the documentation at the high school wasn't up to its normal recommendation, normal standard. It was a change in personnel, and therefore things got a little behind. Administration obviously has assured us we'll get it back on track in the coming years, the year for this year. Then really going into the other piece that we always try to highlight in the management report is future suggestions. We have a very large new standards coming in next year because, as the accounting industry says, I always have to change something because just when we get it right, we got to make a change. The new one is actually GASB 87, which is leases. We are going to be faced with reviewing every lease that the district entered into, and that's not just copiers, mail machines, any type of lease. We're going to have to go through and read every document and allocate those out into those leases to determine whether they need to be reported or not. In the past, leases that you did not maintain the asset at the end of the 5th year and returned were not reflected in our audit. Going forward, they may or may not be. So it's going to be a large endeavor to try to gather all of the data and do all of that research. Additionally, as I said, there's a lot of COVID funding that's coming out. There's a lot of ESSER funds. Be prepared. More than likely, there will be desk reviews of people other than myself coming in to review all of those items. Make sure you go through, and those regulations and rules are ever changing. So it's a moving target to try to spend some of that money. So we're just warning everyone to be cautious. Ask questions, reach out to us if you have questions while you're doing them, and we want to make sure that we can walk you through. And then the last suggestion really hasn't hit on the school side, but it really was more on our municipal client side. there has been some state reviews of compensated absences and accrued sick and vacation reports. What we're suggesting is everybody go back, re-review their contracts with your labor attorney, make sure that your contracts are in agreement with the contracts that you have in place, and that they're in agreement with what the state is allowing, so that those contracts, you don't run into any problems. The municipalities really had more of an issue and got hit pretty hard with some reviews this year. If they switch over to the school districts, we're giving everybody some time to get the house in order if you have to. And like I said, it was a pleasure to complete the audit. I'm available to answer any questions if anybody has any. If not, yes, sure.
Oh, actually, I have some questions.
Sure.
One, you could quickly clarify the recommendation you have with regards to
Sure.
student activities?
Yeah, the student activities, what we had is normally what we do is we come in and we look at the recommendation, we look at the student activity analysis of their receipts and disbursements and the bank reconciliations, and they weren't being performed timely. So it was very difficult for us to see when those receipts, and the one big trigger that we usually see when we start is, do we see large deposits going in all at once? And that's our biggest concern, is when we see a large deposit go in all at once, then our question is where's that money being held?
So I'm gonna trace that to its original.
I mean, it was assured to us it was locked in the safe, but it really should just be locked in the bank and be deposited timely. And as a result, I think that's where we really decided that we felt it would be best to put a comment.
And my other question with your other recommendations, if I understand clearly, these are recommendations for really future compliance.
Future, they're suggestions.
These aren't necessarily process
They're not process.
improvements.
The
These
only
are,
one-
if you wanna be compliant in the future.
Correct.
This is what you want.
These are areas that are future, that we like to put in our reports, so that if, we don't like our reports to be the aha, got you for mess, we give you the heads up as to areas. The only one that will require corrective action by the board and the administration tonight is the student activities one.
Okay, so these, you don't require an action plan by the
No,
board on these other.
the only
three
one
items.
that's requiring corrective action plan is the formal one that's in the report, which is the student activities.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Are there any other questions by board members?
I guess I'll have one more question. How does this track and trend with prior audits?
This is very similar.
So the
Most
audit-
audits are
the audit
very
history
clean,
is-
and I think over the years, probably student activities is the area that we have recommendations in the past in Somerville. But most of the time, it's usually a one and done, and I do believe this one was a change of personnel. And it was very difficult this year, with COVID, that
So there's a root cause.
there's a pause, and we just wanna make sure that you're on the right track going forward,
Thank you.
especially now that school's back in session.
Okay, any other comments, I think, Mr. Boyce?
Yes, Mr. Kimming, thank you. I just want to clarify one thing. The one audit recommendation is my responsibility.
Mhm.
It might be something going on at the high school, but it's my responsibility to communicate what those procedures are, and so that it carries out, in the proper way. So I just want everybody to understand that it's not any poor reflection on the high school administration. It's 100% my responsibility.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyce. I do wanna thank Mr. Boyce and just for really the whole business office, just the work that goes behind the budget. This is just a huge operation this year. I think in the COVID environment, things were infinitely more complicated. And I just wanna thank you and really thank the business office for the work that they've done. And really just, keeping the district in firm financial setting and just making sure that, we are, working within the guidelines that we're supposed to work within.
Doing a great job.
So thank you for your work.
And if I may
There is a resolution that we have to do, so I'd like to do the resolution and maybe leave that open for discussion because there are 3 items that we have to accept. So I'm just gonna read those right now, put the resolution out, and then we can, second the motion, and then if there's another comment, we can do that. So acceptance of the filing of the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. Resolved that the Board of Education accept and file the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. Resolved that the Board of Education accept and file the auditor's management report, administrative findings, financial compliance, and performance fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. And resolved that the Board of Education authorize the administration to enact the attached corrective action plan for the recommendation detailed in the auditor's management report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2021. Is there a second?
Second.
So Mr. Puntillo, just a second. Is there now discussion?
I just want to add one comment, Mr. President, just to say that, our compliance history is the way it is because of the transparency that happens between the auditor and the auditee. So I just wanted to commend the board and the class part for.
Thank you, Mr. Stroh.
For them, so.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, can we, do a roll, Mr. Boyce?
Yes. Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Okay,
Have a
thank
great
you
night.
again.
Have a great evening.
Take care.
All right, Dr. Tian, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, and next up is our HIP updates and self-assessment by our HIP specialist and director of special education.
So good evening. Thank you so much for having us. As you are aware, each year, as part of the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights, we are responsible for reporting to you something called a self-assessment, which is something that we do that looks at certain core indicators, as well as review a lot of the programming that we do district-wide in a hopes of preventing bullying incidents, but really bringing an awareness to this topic and making sure that our students and our staff are all aware of what the proper procedures are for hopefully preventing bullying, and if a situation does arise, making sure that we're handling all of the procedures in a way that's compliant with the law. So tonight I have with me Dr. Helena Strahinsky. She is a specialist at the middle school. I have Ms. Ashley Joshi. She is our specialist at the high school. And I have Ms. Paige Allen, who is our specialist at Vanderveer. They are going to be talking about the programs that they run specifically in their buildings. These are amazing women. They do amazing things. The programs are so comprehensive and meaningful. And what I think we're most proud of is that we don't do band-aid approaches. When they present their pieces, I really want you to pay attention to how we really address issues at multiple levels. So not only are we doing a ton of preventative work, which basically means we're working with the student and the school population as a whole, building skills like emotion regulation, learning how to recognize feelings in oneself and others, learning how to engage in social problem solving, learning how to identify different ways of solving problems, learning how to analyze if I tried something and it didn't work, how do I go back and try something again, learning how to be an upstander instead of a bystander. These are all things that are done at every level in a developmentally appropriate way that targets our students so they can develop these skills, so hopefully they don't wind up in a situation where we actually have to do an investigation. In addition, there are a ton of programs that are developed for students at the secondary and the tertiary level. These are programs that target students that are beginning to show signs of maybe struggling with some of these skills and or have definitely crossed the line and need a lot more intensive intervention. So they will be presenting on that in April process. Okay, so the self-assessment, each year the teams, the school safety teams get together and they look at 8 core elements, and these elements are listed here for you right now. They go through and they look at different indicators in each area and they assign themselves a score. This is a really important process because it helps us to be more self-reflective about where we're really hitting the mark and where we might need a little bit more work. Based on the indicators in each of these areas, the school district gets a score that's submitted to the state, and these are the things that you would see on the front of our website. Every year there's a score. So for this year, this is based on the 2020-21 school year, which remember, we were in the middle of COVID. This is how the school's results panned out. So you can see that at Vanderveer, 94.8% compliance with the 8 indicators. Somerville Middle School came at 87%, and Somerville High School 93% for a district average of 91.8%. So what we do, myself, it's very difficult to talk in a mess. Myself as a district anti-bullying coordinator, my job is then to meet with these ladies and kind of talk about, okay, where did we do really, really well? Where did we not do as well? And what do I need to do in terms of overseeing all these programs to make sure that we're doing a better job in the years to come? This year, COVID made it where we lost a couple of points, was really in making sure that we were keeping up with the mandated meetings involving all the members of certain teams, like parents, making sure we're coordinating that. So we started off really strong this year with new training, making sure that everybody's aware of what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. So we're on top of the areas that we slipped a little bit, but in general, we're doing really, really well. There were no issues with compliance or procedure. Everything that gets reported is being investigated. timelines are being met efficiently, and the programming that you're gonna hear about is really phenomenal. So I am going to turn it over to Paige.
Okay, all right. So, hello, my name is Paige. I am a social worker and anti-bullying specialist at Vanderveer. Okay, so just like every year, we start off the school year with training all staff members on the HIB procedure, just making sure that we are promoting the positive school climate. We educate the students as well with various classroom lessons every month that myself and the other school social worker do, where we go into each classroom. And to start off the school year, we always do a lesson on bullying so that they know like the definition of bullying and what's bullying versus conflict, or something that we call like a mean moment. And we do second step, and I'll talk about that in a few seconds. So for the week of respect this year, I just kind of want to share like the activities that we focused on. Like I said, myself and the other school social worker did the Chrysanthemum Activity. I don't know if you guys have read this book. I'm sure a lot of you probably have. It's a book about a girl who gets bullied, and then we did this activity. You could see like all the hearts that were just spread around the school, where they crumple the heart as I read the book when the girl gets bullied, and then they open it up at the end, and we discuss like how your words affect other people and how bullying really crumples up everyone's hearts, and then we talk about the different things that we can do in those situations. So then we displayed the hearts all over the school. And then for the Anti-Violence and Red Ribbon Week, we did spirit wear and other classroom activities. So the other thing that we do for the classroom lessons is we utilize the Second Step program, which is just a holistic program that is a research-based, trauma-informed program that includes all of these different lessons on different things that Dr. McDonald spoke about. So like emotion regulation, bullying, conflict resolution, different things like that. So that's what we use to do these lessons. And then our newest addition to school climate is we just recently implemented a new PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. I know there's a lot of information up here, but essentially it's a program that we are implementing where we utilize our core values, so all the kids know that our values are being safe, respectful, and responsible, so everything we do ties into those values. And it's like a 3-tier system where everyone uses tier 1, and then kids who are really struggling get interventions from tier 2 and tier 3. We use a program called Kickboard, where all the kids receive what we call Vanderbucks when they are displaying being safe, respectful, and responsible behaviors, and they turn in their Vanderbucks to the prize cart, and I'll show you. So over there you can see like one of our bulletin boards that we made, so being safe, respectful, and responsible equals Vanderbucks, and then they turn in those bucks for things in the prize cart. And then over here is our behavioral expectation. So again, it just ties in our values, and then it's just developmentally appropriate language on showing them how they should act in every different environment in the school. So these are just different pictures. Over here you'll see the prize cart, and then they can turn it in for not only like little trinkets, but they can also turn it in for different activities that we do. So time playing football with different high school students, nails and crafts, so we pull them during their lunch period, and they get to do these different things for earning a specific number of Vanderbucks. And then these are just the various interventions that we all know about. We do the Star Student of the Month as well, where we have a virtual assembly every month, Girls on the Run, peer leadership with the high school, and then all of these individual group services and everything else you can bring up there. Okay, here you go.
Middle child. Hey everybody, it's true. So as Tanya mentioned, I'm Dr. Shertinsky from Somerville Middle School, and I just want to, even before I get into the programming that we're doing within the school year, just kind of point out some of the things that we started in the summer doing to help support our students. I mean, we can now say for the 3rd year in a row, this is a very unique year, and our students have very unique needs. So even as the summertime was upon us, I had a summer transition program for mixed grade levels, just to introduce and reintroduce students into the school, as well as to each other. We did icebreaker activities across the grade levels, gave them a chance to really kind of share their concerns in a safe, supportive way, but also within kind of the quiet bounds of the school before the whole school year started. We also had our Camp SMS program for the 6th graders, and we had orientations for the 7th and 8th graders. even at the start of the year, our teachers were very focused on relationship building, icebreakers. They did a number of trainings. I provided some PD, and also they sought out other PD programs that were geared toward the needs that they might encounter in the classroom and how to support both the social and emotional needs of their students, as well as those relationships that we already know are so important, but were gonna be especially important in light of everything we've been going through. So once the school year started, we then had our Start with Hello Week. This is actually a program that was developed by Sandy Hook Promise, and it is all about relationship building as well as promoting nonviolence. You know, just making connections, the difference between feeling lonely, being lonely, and how to kind of break through that for themselves and for each other. So throughout this week, not only did we have bulletin boards throughout the school, we had an introductory video on the first morning. We then had daily challenges every day, like say hello to someone in a different language, go thank an adult in your life who's made a difference, you know, say hello to somebody you've never spoken to before. And then at the end of the week, students filled out a Google form where actually I made them work at it. They kind of had to fill in some of those answers and kind of think about what they had done. And then they were entered into raffles for prizes. We also had Purple for Peace Day during that week, and a few other activities. Plus the teachers were provided with additional resources and kind of short activities that they could do with the students. We also had our Great Expectations assemblies with all the grade levels to kind of lay out not just the code of conduct, but also again things like the anti-bullying laws, you know, what's expected, and how to access the help and support if they need it. This was actually an activity we wrapped up Start with Hello Week, and I love how it looks in the hallway in the middle. We have them on both the 7th, 8th grade hallway when they enter and the 6th grade hallway, and the students actually created waves for each other. And all the waves had different friendly greetings or, you know, just nice things to walk into. And the idea was not only greet everyone as they walked in, but also encourage the students to keep practicing these things all year long. So these are some of the other October activities we did. October is a very busy month with all the mandated weeks. So we kind of take this as the opportunity to take all that warmth from September and just kind of keep it going, really ramp the students up so that we can hopefully keep that stamina through the rest of the year. So for the Week of Respect, I think the biggest thing that really I did along with Miss Riley, who is the lead replacement for our guidance counselor, was the Voices for Respect contest. This encouraged students basically to give them a voice, so in any way that they felt most comfortable expressing themselves, to share what respect means to them, or even more so, how they could promote respect across other students. We had a really hard time picking. There was posters, presentations, so we ended up during Violence Awareness Week having a chance to actually share all those entries in multiple ways. And then our winner was actually an 8th grader who wrote a poem kind of about a personal experience he had, and he was willing to share that on the loudspeaker. So it was just a really great way to cap that week. We also had a Pause for Respect acknowledgement program that's been going on all October, and that was staff and students. Even actually, in addition, we'd done that in October, and then a couple teachers actually took it up for November, and we had staff shout outs this month, and the students actually got to engage in shouting out to the staff in kind of return of the fact that the Pause for Respect were staff kind of acknowledging what they saw among the students. So it's kind of neat just to see that take off. We had Be a Hero Day. We did have our first Be Good raffle, which is, you know, we use positive behavior support in that kind of that tier 1 universal way to encourage positive behavior, and the raffle is a way where everyone has a chance to be entered if they display positive behavior, and that kind of complements our Student of the Month, which is a teacher nominated program. We had a Campbell Assembly. We have one of those every year. They're incredibly engaging. Class Colors Day, and then our school-wide pep rally was at the end of that week. These are just some of the things from the Respect contest. We have also our Pause for Respect. In the bottom right corner, we have a piece of the poem that the student had done. It really was beautiful. When I read it, I kind of was like, that was the giveaway. There's no way, when I'm getting tears in my eyes, it was awesome to hear him read it. We also had School Violence Awareness Prevention Week, so we did a few other activities during this week. I think what I think is the most important for me to point out on this is that that was also the week that we gave the NJDOE climate survey. We like to do this in the beginning and the end of the year, so October, let the students get settled, October and then May, and then I love data, so I love comparing those to previous years. I like to compare the same time of year each year, as well as beginning to end. Last year wasn't going to give me the best comparison. We did do this last year, but we tied in a lot of the virtual information. So I compared it to October of 2019, and the huge increases in positive perceptions was amazing. So I especially appreciated that the students had such a positive, and they had already had a lot of positive perceptions about this, but just the growth was, I never expected it, about teacher respect and listening to them and giving them room for their ideas, as well as other students. Usually students don't like to rate each other, that's where we get the most neutral answers, but they were really positive about their ability to resolve conflicts and their negative views on cheating and their positive views on working hard and putting effort in. So those all really jumped kind of off the page at us. There was also increased this is actually a good thing, because negative perception would mean that disagree, strongly disagree. There was increased negative perceptions of the presence of teasing, hib, and violence. And that was, again, across the board. So that is a good thing, I promise. I know it says increased negative. The other thing that we did highlight a few areas where there were some drops. And that actually, the school climate team, when we met already, at least once this year already, went over these climate surveys and has already made recommendations to more widely publicized homework club, because students talked about not being sure to get extra help and also not having a school-wide voice. So we talked about other ways to use the student council, maybe have a student representative on the climate team. So we're already looking to make changes. Finally, for Red Ribbon Week, we had our activities, which our peer leaders helped with, which I thought was great. The 8th graders came into the lunches and helped the students do their pledges and a few other activities. And finally, these are the other things that we're doing at all 3 levels of intervention for the rest of the year. Some of these, like Second Step program, which you heard Paige talk about, it's an evidence-based program that they're doing in their health classes. And so that's, regular lessons and activities. And then some of these are like the seasonal bulletin boards, which is actually being done by a class. They did a gratitude one that they invited the entire school to submit for, and right now they're doing a winter wishes one. We've done staff training, we're still doing the raffles and the student of the month. We have our clubs finally kicking back up, so we have student council, peer leaderships. Spirit Week is this week. I'm sporting my Bulldog gear, so that's going on as well. And then as you can see, there's some other things that are tied into the anti-bullying laws, like the school climate team and the remediation training that we do, both individually and as groups. So and we are doing Challenge Day. I just set up. So our 8th grade will be engaging in person with all the requirements. I already talked to the program on March 4th. So Friday, March 4th, right after Read Across America Day. So I'm very, very excited about that. So finally, I'm going to pass it to the high school's Education Support Specialist of the Year, Dr.
So yes, I'm Ashley Joshi. I'm the school psychologist and the anti-bullying specialist at the high school. So far this year, I know Dr. Cho talked a little bit about our summer programs. We did that up at the high school as well. So we ran some transition groups. Dr. Morocco ran those, and then I did a lot of individual work with students, just kind of helping them come back from hybrid or full-time virtual instruction. A lot of them were really anxious about being back in the building again or being around large groups of people. So we kind of started everything over this summer. Then we kind of started off the school year and we jumped right into October, where we do the Week of Respect. So here we gave the teachers options if they wanted to do challenges, watch videos, read quotes, or do class discussions on different activities that kind of correlated with the Week of Respect. One of my favorite days is our tie-dye day. Tried to get Mr. Foley to wear a nice tie-dye sweatshirt that day. We participated in the See Me campaign, which is kind of like how a student knows that they are seen and how they want to be seen. So our teachers had the option to do that in the classroom. We engaged in various mental health presentations in our health classes and our psychology classes. All of the non-traditionals at the high school went into the classrooms. We talked about the support that we have at the high school, resources that we have, resources that we can provide in school and outside of school. And it was really cool just to hear their questions. They had a lot of questions about what we do in the building. We did our HIB training for staff and students in the beginning of the year. We did some additional staff training on things such as mindfulness, our teen mental health first aid, which just started in November. Our awesome Mrs. Gracksmith and Mr. Luca over here are working hard, going into the classrooms and training students on various mental health challenges, how to support a friend in need and how to take care of themselves. You hear my voice is starting to shake now. Okay, it's the mask, not the nerves. Okay, so then we have our Green Dot program at the high school. which focuses on the 3 B's, which is be direct, distract, or delegate if you see something. So it's basically if you see something, do something, and be an active bystander. Coming up for the rest of this year, we have Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. We will be starting youth mental health first aid trainings for staff members again. We just sent out our school climate surveys, so we are going to look at all of those results and compare them to our last survey. And we have No Name Calling Week coming up, which I'm excited about as well. Here are some of the various ways that we kind of just spread facts, research, resources, and whatnot. On the bottom left-hand corner, you can kind of see this We Can Break the Stigma video, which is something I really like to show when I go into the classroom. And then all year long, we have our peer-to-peer program, our Guidance Pioneer Ambassador, which is like a new student transition program, which I have witnessed this year to be really, really helpful for some students. Our monthly awareness celebrations, we have our very amazing peer leadership. I'm super thankful to them because they do breakout sessions and talk a lot about the common teen issues that come up throughout the year. And as we know, time is of the essence. It's really hard for us to meet with each student and be able to talk to them, so our peer leadership program is really helpful with that. We have our school climate team meetings, individual and group counseling, which runs all year, our student of the month. We have some added mental health support at the high school this year, which has been super, super helpful. Our virtual calming corner, which we created, and our students really are enjoying it. We have our character education committee, which has also been really helpful because they come up with a lot of really good ideas. The various groups that we're running this year, we have a stressed out group because who isn't stressed out this year? Social skills group, an LGBTQI group, and then a few other things worth noting: restorative practices, conflict mediation, reflective assignments, and the counseling that we kind of do on a daily basis. We also have our parent-principal hour, student leadership council, faculty council meetings, equity team meetings, and then we have all of our fabulous clubs at Somerville High School and all the community engagement activities that they do, and our Instagram and Twitter, which are used to highlight staff members and students. Oh, I made it in then. I just said all of that.
So as you can see, the programming in this district, one of the reasons that I feel so blessed to work here, is that the programming is so comprehensive. When I used to work as a school psychologist, in a non-traditional role, my pitch to parents is always like, if your kid comes home and they said they saw Dr. McDonald today, it doesn't mean something's wrong, because we are present. They are in the classrooms. They are doing so much primary prevention work, which really is the gold standard for mental health. It's doing that preventative piece to build these skills. And you can see that no matter what grade you're in, pre-K through 12, students are constantly immersed. It's built into the curriculum. It's part of the fabric of the community. So students receive so much opportunity to participate in these programs to build skills. And it's really due to the great spearheading by these ladies in collaboration with guidance, with teachers, with the community, with outside agencies working together. We really do have a very, very solid program that we're very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, question, I'm sorry.
Mr. Succioli, you have a question?
Yeah, just really quick, a fantastic presentation, all around, all 3 representatives and yourself, Dr. McDonald. Ms. Joshi, congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
Good job, well done. Just really quick, out of curiosity question, can you elaborate more on the Character Ed Committee?
So the Character Ed Committee is, Mr. Damaski is the head of that committee, and then other staff members, and they meet and just talk about how to spread also like a positive school climate, positivity. They talk about student of the month, and just kind of what they want their role to be in the school, how they want to be seen, and just different things that they want to spread around the building. It's very helpful for me because they talk about a lot of the things that I might already be thinking about, and we work together a lot. So it's nice because the school climate team and the Character Ed Committee, they do a lot and talk a lot about the same kinds of things. So we really can kind of work together and help each other out.
Awesome, thank you.
I want to thank all of you too. I know how complex this is. It is something, again, social emotional learning and just all the work that goes into it. And just to transition back this year, this is something, again, that I know all of you were very involved in terms of just making sure that students felt connected you know, that's still ongoing work, and you know, it's hard work, but it's important work, so thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to make an agenda move here, because Amanda, it's 7:15 now, we have a couple more presentations, so what I'd like to do is move you up right now to allow you to do the student board member report.
Sure.
And then you can make a choice at that point as to whether you have other things you need to get to tonight, like homework.
I have finals next week. I unfortunately do have to study for those, so I can continue next semester. But yeah, I'll jump right into it. Kind of like what the last presentation was talking about, the Spectrum Alliance meeting took place today. And it's a safe place for all LGBTQIA students and youth allies to build a community and organize around issues impacting students. There were two different meetings today, one for seniors, that was at 12:56, since most seniors get off early, and then one at 2:30, both in rooms 200 and 221. It also seems that tomorrow is a big day for clubs, since there is at least 3 meetings to my knowledge that are happening, so there's something for every student at SHS. The first one, let's see, is Art Club. They are meeting from 2:30 to 3:30. They always do the coolest things there. They are glazing their ceramic pocket vases that they made last meeting. The second club is Cosmetology Club, meeting at the same time. They'll be working on eye-catching makeup. Please bring your own eye makeup, concealer, mascara, eyeliner, and brushes. And then Genesis Club is also preparing their visit to the elderly. Everyone needs some attention and cheer, especially during these holiday times. So the Genesis Club is making cards, practicing Christmas carols, and decorating cookies to give away. The next day, which is the 9th, Key Club meeting will take place, this time in the morning, not at 2:30, in room 306, and they have tons of December service opportunities as well. Mr. Foley is holding his virtual parent-principal coffee hour Friday, December 17th, so that's next Friday, on Google Meets. And the plastic bag drive that I talked about last meeting is still ongoing. That is also ending on December 17th. That is for, if you didn't hear last time, it's for a Boy Scout troop in Branchford. There's this company that takes all shopping plastic bags, melts it down, and creates a park bench. So they need at least 500 pounds of plastic, which plastic is extremely light. So if you have any plastic bags, you can drop it off at the main entrance. Winter sports have begun for me. Bowling just started yesterday, and I could not be happier. So watch out for all those game schedules. I'm sure Mr. Sergio will be talking about that. Some of the sports we have are girls and boys basketball, girls and boys fencing, bowling, swimming, wrestling. There's literally everything you can think of at this school. The next thing, the fall issue of Valkyrie is now posted under the SHS website headlines. There's a lot of different topics that they talk about, new educators, bringing up Vincent, and etc. And the last thing I have, it feels like this meeting is a lot shorter on my part. We talked about, Juliana and I talked so much last meeting that we're like, wow, there really isn't that much this time. But Pajama Day was held last Friday to raise money for CHOP. This was run by peer-to-peer club, I want to say. There was a ton of support, a ton of outcomes. A lot of money was raised for these children. And it was really sweet to see me online, because I'm in RV full-time now. But I love to be able to see through the Instagram account all the activeness that the students are participating in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. Any questions before Amanda makes a break?
Well, in the area of transparency, I will thank you for a couple of those little reminders.
You can ask me questions. I really don't want to study.
Luke, do you have any questions?
I won't say I'm out, but right now.
Amanda, I want to thank you though. You know, your reports are really informative and very helpful, I think.
Juliana would have been here. She's actually at the cross country. Oh, I didn't even turn my microphone on. She's at the cross country banquet right now. So their season was phenomenal from what I've understood. And it's really nice to actually be back in person for the banquets, because last year a lot of them were virtual. So they're at the Elks right now. So good for them.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We're gonna let you go. Okay. Have a great evening.
You as well.
Okay. Good luck with bowling.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next up is our testing data presentation by Melissa Steger.
Okay, so usually I try to make the presentation a little bit short for Mr. Just. This one is going to be a little bit longer just because of the content, so I apologize for that up front. I'm Melissa Sager. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and Christina Domagal will be taking my place. This is a mandated report by the Department of Education to report on our testing data within 60 days of receiving results. We'll also be talking about the start strong data and the access and the DLM. There were some changes this time in testing compared to previous years. One, there was no end of the year assessment for general education in the spring of 20 and the spring of 2021. As you know, in the spring of 20, we were all locked down, and the spring of 2021, they did not give an assessment at the end of the year, though they started this year with one. The access for L's and the DLM, and we'll talk a little bit about third, was not given in 2020 as well. It did resume in the spring of last year, and Start Strong was given. There was also some changes moving forward that some of you may have heard about. The high school, New Jersey will now have a New Jersey GPA exam in 11th grade. That's new information, more details are coming out. It will not affect this current year's class or juniors, but it is something to be aware of. It's on the horizon. Grades 3 through 9 will take ELA and math as they have been. That's a difference because 10th grade was also in there before. And grades 5, 8, and 11 will take the science test, which again was just added in the last couple of years. What we have, those are internal benchmarking. We give a Linkit, an iReady, and an ERLA benchmark multiple times during the year, so we'll continue to do that to have data as we move forward. So first I'm going to go into the access scores. Access for ELS is basically where the students are in their English language proficiency. There's 4 domains. There's speaking, writing, reading, and listening. Once a student has a 4.5 on this particular exam, and that's a composite score, they exit out of the ELL program and they are considered mainstream, although there's a requirement by the Department of Education to still track them for 2 years after they exit an ESL program. This is going to be kind of data that's it's hard to make sense of because we don't have state results yet, and we don't necessarily know how long the students have been here. This is K through 12 data for the access for ELS last year. I'd say about 18 of our kids were 4.9, so that means they are exiting and they'll be in mainstream. They'll no longer be English language learners. And then some of our students, as you can see, are in the 1 or 2 range, but again, we don't know exactly how. We know like the data in the past, but looking at this data, we don't know when they came into the country, how long they've been here. So there is additional data that we just looked at. 22 of our students we have data on from previous years, and of those 22, 86% of them have actually grown in their access scores. So with this 13.64%, we're very concerned about that, but we don't know if yet. We haven't really dug into the data yet to see if they were virtual students, how frequently they were logging on, how they were doing in their other classes as well. So pretty much overall positive results for this. Now to the NJ Start Strong. So this exam, as we said, was given in the beginning of the school year. And unlike previous testing, because there were fewer questions, they didn't give us as much detail. So usually there's a scale score, I think it goes up to a 600. This didn't have any score at all. It only divided it into 3 categories. Strong support needed, some support needed, or less support needed. Strong support needed, which we could say not proficient. Less support is probably our proficient students. So because the data was not as robust this year, it was not as helpful to teachers as it usually is, but one thing that was really nice about it this year is they did give access to exactly which question was asked. So you can click on it and see which question was asked, and you can click on it and see what standards that particular question was measuring. So that allows teachers to go in, look at the question. You can kind of see there the percentage of students, in a particular grade level that, had that question correct. And then they can go in and see, are the questions I'm asking aligned with these types of questions? The rigor of my course material, is it the same? So this was a little bit more beneficial. This was something Pearson promised us years ago, and they finally gave us this year. So we're happy, we're not gonna complain. The other thing is when we talk about the 3 categories, and you'll see that in a minute, they gave us a raw score, but as you can see right from here, some support may be needed, had a 13, where strong support may be needed had a 12. So there's only a 1-point difference right there from what you consider proficient or partially proficient. So it's just something to keep in mind, that it's not probably the most exact data that we can have looking at where they are. The other nice piece, and the Department of Education has said that on December 9th, they're going to release the actual individual score reports. But what teachers can look at now are the score reports for each student. You can see for this particular student that they got 1 response correct, 2 partially correct, and 1 incorrect for those questions. So that gives a little bit of teachers a little bit of data about how the kids are doing as well. So this is our ELA 4 through 9. We like to see the green because that, you know, is what we say proficient. As you can see, our ELA, we have a larger percentage of kids that are proficient. We have some with support. We still have a percentage that have strong support needed, and we'll talk about what we're doing for those kids a little bit later. What is nice to look at is we also have internal benchmark data. So this is supposed to be predictive of how the students will do on the state test. In the elementary school, we have something called the ERLA. It's a reading test. It's administered regularly depending on the kid's growth in reading. So it's not like every month or anything like that. It's on an ongoing basis. In our 4th grade, the ERLA, as of right now, says 41% or 41 of our students out of 112 are on track to reading on grade level or above. If you look, what we have from the, sorry, it says iReady data. So, and I put the wrong thing on there. So if you look what it says from the Start Strong data, is that also we have about 44%. So it's a little bit different, but it's also done at different times of the year. For 5th grade, 52%. Up there it says 35, but you can also look 20 days old on average, so it might not have the students who've had like a growth. It might be some of the students who may have had like a little bit of less growth in that time period. Also in the middle school, we have iReady data. Again, looking for triangulation, looking to see how comparable the data is. Their Start Strong is telling us 29% of our kids are proficient. Our 6th grade Start Strong data was telling us 33%. So Ready was telling us 29, Start Strong was telling us 33%. So it's in that range, which is kind of nice because iReady was supposed to be something about 85 to 95% predictive of PARCC scoring, and it seems like it's on track to be doing that. The math was a little bit less exciting than the ELA. I won't say, as you can see, there's a lot of areas where support is needed. We know that and we knew that. It's not a surprise. We were using a math program, K through 5, that was a great math program, but it wasn't necessarily aligned with the standards. So when students are getting tested on something that they haven't been taught, there's usually a disconnect. So this, we have a new math program we adopted this year, K through 5. It is completely aligned with the standards. And anytime you implement a program, it takes 3 to 5 years to see growth. And we know some of our growth has been kind of interrupted, COVID, few of us stuck at home. So it's something to keep in mind. You should see in about 3 years a change in the proportionality of the colors. But again, we're always checking the data against our internal benchmarks. We have 16% that they said are proficient in iReady and math. This one's a little different. They said 14%, so there's a little bit of a difference there. 7th grade, we said 24. The Start Strong said 7. It's like, whew, that's a huge difference compared to the other ones. One of the things you have to keep in mind is there was probably about 10 questions the students were asked on the Start Strong, whereas Ready, the iReady assessment, does all of the standards all together. So the standards that were measured definitely need to be looked at, but that's our overall standards in the grade level. This is more this is our high school, Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Now, Algebra 1, as you can see, again, there's a lot of strong support needed. This does not include the students who took algebra in middle school. So these are our kids who it's their 1st or 2nd time taking Algebra 1 because it's a graduation requirement. Geometry, some more of less support. And then as you can see when we get to Algebra 2, the colors shift. At SMS and Algebra and Geometry, And you can see in algebra, there's strong support needed. You have to remember again that this Algebra 1 test was based on 8th grade standards. So these are supposedly the standards they were taught in 8th grade. These are 6th and 7th grade students, they're current 8th graders, but previous 6th and 7th grade students. So they've never had any, they haven't really been totally in an 8th grade math class yet. Those standards will be part of the advanced math this school year. So they're being again measured on standards that they might not have encountered. The geometry at SMS, again, we can see that there's a lot of bubble kids. As you can see remember from the earlier, sometimes it's only a 1-point differential in the raw score. So it might not be as telling as it seems. Then the last one for Start Strong is we had the science assessment. 2 or 3 years ago, the state gave the first science assessment, and they did not release the results. So they gave the test, and they did not share the results with anybody. So this is the first time we're actually getting science scores out of the state on our science assessment. As you can see again, we don't love to see the red, but there's like strong support needed in 6th grade, 9th, a little bit more in between, and then by 12th it's a little bit higher. One of the things again, with science standards, they cycle through. So as students go through different grades, it might be in different orders or different places, but they will hit all of the standards in different levels by the time they're in 12th grade. So not that we don't think 6th and 9th grade is important, but 12th grade is really what we're looking at more for this particular test because of the way the standards grow. The other piece is the cross-cutting concepts. And our previous STEM supervisor, Alex Laurie, has done a ton of work with that in our new curriculum. And we have a new middle school curriculum that started this year, and we had a new biology curriculum that just started last year. So usually the next step is we break it down into our subgroups: Black, Hispanic, low socioeconomic status, special ed, ELLs. We don't have that data yet. As I said, the state was supposed to release it, I believe, on November 30th. They gave notification that it is now coming out December 9th. So we would have been all set for this presentation, but they're a little late to the party. And I can say that because I worked there, so it's okay. So here are some of the key observations. We're seeing that what we're collecting internally is matching how they're doing on the state assessment. That's good news, because that means that the data we're getting, we can triangulate it better. And so when we see a kid really struggling, in our internal benchmarks, we can dig more deeply into what it is specifically that they need to work on. So we can start using these benchmarks more effectively to start remediating some of these issues. Students seem to do better in ELA. Part of that is, we're a heavily reading and writing type of culture, but also the ELA curriculum was redesigned about 6 or 7 years ago to align to the Common Core state standards. So we've had that alignment for time, and remember I said it takes 3 to 5 years to see a significant shift? We're there. So the hope is to see that shift in math in a few years. And strong support needed may indicate a need for additional before or after school interventions, because the old model was if a kid needed intervention, we'd pull them out of class and we'd give them intervention. When they are out of class, they're missing the learning. So while they might be remediating one issue, we're creating more issues, up there. So one of the things with the ESSER funds that they've been looking at as a district here in Somerville is before and after school intervention programs for some of these students. There's also some other interventions that I'll go into a little bit later. The DLM, in order to report on the data, you have to have an N size of at least 20, and that's because you want the data to be anonymous, so students, individual personal information is not revealed. Our N score is less than 20, it's actually 19, so it's very, very close. So we analyze it internally, but it's not something we can present publicly. So what do we do with all of this? We look at this constantly, monthly sometimes, and we think about where we can make improvements. We look at areas that are being successful, where they are successful. We do a notice and wonder protocol routine sometimes, both as a curriculum team and sometimes out in the building. So in the pre-K through 5, we have the data wall updates each month. So the supervisors and the building administration looks at those. And we've done a lot of PD on ARC, on maximizing the ERLA, Earl, if you remember, is that assessment that we give for reading in the elementary school. It's a new program and just giving a lot of support to teachers as they use it. SMS, we were able to meet with all the teachers to talk about the Start Strong data. That's where some of the math teachers looked at one of the problems and they said, oh, I understand why kids got that wrong. And we looked and it was actually the way kids had to enter their information on the part. Remember, some of these kids haven't had state testing in a while, so using some of those tools would be beneficial. And then team time can be used to look at the iReady data, to look at the classroom data, and to compare it to the state data. And then at SHS, because I didn't have time to meet with all the teachers, we did send them a video on how to access the information. And at the high school, their wildly important goal is tied to their Linkit data, which is their internal benchmark that we're using up there to look at how they're doing on the standards. So, implementations for curriculum and intervention. Almost done, you guys. Thanks for hanging with me. So the iReady was our previous math curriculum. We started it in middle school, as I said, the year of the pandemic. We are now adopted at K through 5. So we have iReady now K through 8, and we're giving teachers lots of support. We're doing math coaching. The previous program, as we said, was not aligned with the standards. We knew that, but there's only so much that can be done at any one time. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a rollout plan that was responsive to the teacher and student needs. It takes 2 to 3 years to see a change. We do have math interventions now that we did not have in previous years. And we also have building equity teams now that are looking at some of that subgroup data. As I said, we couldn't really break it down yet because we're waiting for the state report, but we have our own internal data. For ELA, we've definitely done a big focus on phonics and skills, especially K through 3. The leveled reading that we remember when we were kids, remember when we were Blue Jay or Red Bird or whatever, they're finding that's not as effective as they thought it was. We'll shift again in 20 years. But what they're really looking at is our skills. So I might be a Blue Bird, you might be a Red Jay, but we both need help on main idea. So they'll pull skills-based groups. We're going to continue to provide grade level text. You know, sometimes we say, oh, the kids, you know, they're not reading at this level, it's too hard for them. No, we'll make it accessible for them because kids need to be given grade level text to grow. We're adjusting the curriculum. We have instructional coaches in each of the buildings now, and so they can work with one-on-one with teachers and grade level teams to adjust the curriculum as we go. We changed our intervention cycles. It used to be if you got intervention, it was like a lifelong sentence. Now we're doing 6-week targeted cycles with a specific goal, and then the kid gets a break. And then if they need help on that goal again or a new goal, we're doing another 6-week cycle. And again, the building equity teams. Reading, the text complexity as I mentioned, independent reading. There was a huge initiative. It started at the high school, I think, with independent reading. They have wonderful independent reading libraries, and they should do book talks and all of these things. We are building a culture of reading. My son came home, he just took the PSAT, and he said, how do I get a better score? Read. Okay. And social studies, we're doing the curriculum on rewrite. The reading for information and the reading for history standards that are measured in ELA are going to appear more prominently in the curriculum rewrite. As I said about the science, the updates that were given. For our ELLs, we're hiring new ESL teachers to replace resignations and retirements. So we're going to have 2 new ESL teachers starting in January. In the past, we've done sheltered instruction observational protocol. You might have heard it called SIOP. These are techniques that teachers could use in the classroom to help support their English language learners. A plan is in the process of being created to make sure that training is done more continuously and it's integrated. And then the new ESL curriculum is on the docket to be updated next year. ESL curriculum should not be a separate curriculum. It should be whatever is happening in the classroom with scaffolds and supports. And so we've moved towards that with starting to change our train our ESL teachers in ARC and foundations. So, I always say that this is a journey. You know, if people could fix things overnight, we wouldn't have jobs because then no one would need public education. But while there's areas of growth, there's been some areas that have grown as well. Any questions? That was a lot of data, I'm sorry.
Is this available to us?
I can share this presentation, yes.
It'll be posted.
I just have a question, Melissa, about the platform. So, and just clarify for me, like iReady, I know is a digital platform.
Yep.
Smart Strong was
Sorry,
the
it was
Pearson,
digital.
was the Pearson digital
Yep.
platform that
Yep.
students had not used in probably
3 years or more.
3 years or more.
Yeah.
So there was a lack of familiarity for students on that. And then the ERLA is
It's a kind of a hybrid.
Mhm.
It's digital in the way that we measure the scores, but the kids do the reading one-on-one with the teacher,
Right.
depending on their reading level.
Right, right. So that's more of a conference kind of based
Yes.
platform, a conference-based assessment. Okay.
And that's
then-
why they're not as regularly it's when the kid
Right.
needs it at that time.
And then I guess that I'm leading up to a question just around just our I guess our assessment capacity in terms of formative assessment compared to 3 years ago, because I do think the absence of state data has made us look at some things differently. A lot of the state data was always summative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I heard you correctly, the Start Strong data was fairly limited in terms of, it was 10 questions sometimes that students were responding to, but would you say that the capacity of the district in terms of the assessment data that's being collected, you know, is giving a better kind of full picture of students over time, so we're getting maybe information that we didn't get 3 or 4 years ago?
I see Scott shaking his head, yes, absolutely. You know, we have now K through 12 internal benchmarks that did not exist in the past, you know, because we relied heavily on, you know, the formal testing. But yes, Lincoln at the high school, it's not always fun, you know, but the ELA department and the math department have been using it, and we have a new math program as well, Savas at the high school, that they kind of speak to each other. So yeah, we are looking, before we get to those summative assessments, at what needs to be addressed. So we're using, even though these are called benchmarks, we're using them as formative assessments.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Or?
Thank you.
You're good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, for our district highlights, for Vanderveer, well, actually, I want to start off by saying, yep. On the auditors, we did that.
We did it all.
We did it.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
that's
all
all we
done.
did. Yeah, yeah, we unanimous. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why Brian is not sure, and that's because it's his birthday today, everyone.
Yay.
Happy birthday. We won't say how old he is. Our teachers of the year, or educators of the year. In elementary school, it was Salvina Salento and Nurse Jennifer Shaw. In the middle school, it was Ken Wortman and David Peist, and rumor has it that Dave gave his flowers to his wife and told it was from him, but don't quote me on it. And then for the high school, you had Ashley Joshi, who was here before and presented, and Matt Krimpaski. So congratulations to all of them, they're phenomenal. And on to Vanderveer. On November 2nd, Vanderveer students and staff participated in a school-wide read-aloud of Ray Ray Paints a Self-Portrait, read by the author herself, Soraya Fafana, who was a 16-year-old published author and former Vanderveer and middle school student. Her family, unfortunately, as she said, moved to Hillsborough, but she actually wishes she was in Somerville. The description of her book is when Ray Ray gets a class assignment to do a self-portrait, she's excited. This is until she realizes that her hair isn't like anyone else's, not even her family's. Determined to find out where her hair came from, Ray Ray sets off on a quest to learn who she really is. Through discussions with Mr. Reevy and Mrs. Frevert, Ray informed them she wanted to share the story with those who helped her grow into the person she is today, her Vanderveer teachers. After the 2 read-alouds via Google Meet, Ray visited the classrooms of her former teachers, plus some additional classrooms, where students were able to ask questions about her book her interest in writing, and any plans for new storybooks. Ray was an amazing guest author and provided students with an unforgettable experience. Before leaving the building, Ray continued to spread kindness by donating several books to various classrooms, to the Vanderveer Prize Card, and to the school library. And anyone that caught that, she did a phenomenal job. Also on November 11th, Veterans Day was celebrated by inviting students involved in the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts program to wear their uniforms to school. These students then gathered in the main office at 9 a.m., proceeded to the flagpole, and assisted in a ceremonious flag raising as a recording of taps was heard playing. Upon the flag being raised and at the conclusion of taps, the students began a chant of USA, USA, USA that lasted until they re-entered the building. The Somerville PTO coordinated with Ms. Frevert to supply each classroom with board games and playing card games for students' enjoyment during indoor recess due to inclement weather. And just so you know, they've been sending kids out every chance they get, so there haven't been too many inclement days so far. New board game donations are always appreciated by the students, lunch aides, and the staff of Vanderveer. Thank you, Somerville Pre-K 8 PTO. On November 8th, the second grade classes had a visit from Mayor Sullivan. Mayor Sullivan spent time talking with students about local government to go along with their unit in social studies. During his visits, the students learned about the different parts of a local government and how they make important decisions for a town. The students acted out a council meeting in which decisions needed to be made about spending. Some students held the job as council members representing public works, finance, administration, police, fire, and public property. Thank you to Mayor Sullivan for always also sharing the importance of getting involved in one's community. And for Vanderveer's 2nd and 4th grade students, they were lucky to be visited by Somerville High School peer leaders, which was talked about before, who completed activities with students. The activities were centered around setting goals, making good choices, and writing positive words to describe themselves. Thank you to the peer leaders. For Somerville Middle School, the SMS Robotics Club participated in a scrimmage and formal competition within the last 2 weeks and did very well for the first competition ever for the SMS Robotics team. And this team will serve as a feeder into the high school program. Our advisors, Mrs. Colhub-Strang and Mrs. Schumi, said that the students created amazing projects that positioned them well at the regional competition. So job well done. SMS Student Council elections went extremely well, with over 95% of the students voting for the following: President, Kaylee Allen; Vice President, Isabella Jimenez; Secretary, Olivia Lavey; Treasurer, Annalena Bohach; Historian, Jack Schweitzer. And congratulations to SMS teacher Marisol Espinoza for being among a select group of English teachers to win the highly competitive 2021 NJCTE grant. The SMS drama program will soon be preparing for the spring production of the play, The Little Mermaid. Auditions took place before Thanksgiving break, and now that the auditions are over, song rehearsals will be underway. Congratulations to our SMS girls soccer team, who placed 2nd overall in the conference. Hopefully, Luke, I'm not taking this from you. Kudos to, well, maybe that'll be good, we'll have less Luke. Kudos to Coach Tara Marash on an amazing year of coaching. Her team of student athletes were incredible. And one more I'm taking from you, Luke. Congratulations to our SMS boys soccer team, who placed 5th overall in the conference. Kudos to Coach Nick Petronco and his team for tremendous improvement over the last competition year, moving up several places in an extremely competitive conference. And SMS held its annual Thanksgiving food drive. 15 families received a Thanksgiving package with food and a gift card for turkey or ham. Mrs. Santana, Mrs. Chitundu, Mr. DiPaolo, and the student council spent several hours packaging and preparing each care package with SMS love. And that concludes district highlights.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tim. So we're going to move on to report of board committees. So our first, we've already done our student board member reports, so moving on to finance. Mr. Carlson.
Okay, a motion to approve that items 1 through 7 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Item number 1 would be the board secretary's financial reports. Item number 2, the acceptance of the monthly reports for Item number 3, payroll. Item number 4, bills list for Vanderveer and middle school. Item number 5, the line item transfers within the budget. Item number 6 is the roofing and HVAC replacement project at Vanderveer School. And item number 7 is the storage building project at Vanderveer School.
Second.
Okay, a second by Mr. Pontillo. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Boyce, do you roll please?
Yes, Ms. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Pontillo.
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick.
Yes.
Okay, motion to approve that items 8 through 15 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Item number 8, the change order, track reconstruction at Somerville High School. Item number 9 is a change order for the light fixture replacement at multiple schools. Item number 10 is the bills list for the high school and district-wide. Item number 11 would be the approval of the Board of Education meeting dates. Item number 12 would be the ARP ESSER grant approval. Item number 13 would be the school security grant. Item number 14, the commodity resale agreement. And item number 15, travel expenditure resolutions.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Van Horn, any discussion?
Yes, the only discussion that I'll have is not necessarily on the resolutions, but since Dan, this is your last reading, I just want to say what a privilege it was to serve on the Finance Committee with you. Of all the subcommittees that the board does have, Finance is probably one of the most visible and over the shortest window. So I want to say a job well done, and looking forward to us crossing paths again.
And you missed Bill's really nice speech value in the beginning, so you have to go back to the video to watch it.
Did they really?
Unless you want to repeat.
Sorry. You missed me blushing there. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Boyce?
Yes, Ms. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Pontillo.
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick.
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to Technology Committee, Ms. Van Horn.
Technology Committee met December 3rd. The tech team continues to monitor and respond to support tickets. They are currently developing the 2022-2023 budget and refresh cycle. They're currently vetting options for a shared printer copier solution, and the transition plans for the tech department are being developed.
Okay, thank you very much. Any discussion there? Okay, moving on to curriculum, Ms. Van Horn.
Okay, Curriculum Committee met on the 29th of November. We discussed the Start Strong data and its alignment with our district benchmarks that was presented tonight. There was an overview of Somerville's Gifted and Talented program. They're finalizing the math criteria for G&T at this time. We're looking at possible scenarios for the Esl tutoring program. The career and technical education writers will begin the new application and update the current offering. They're still looking for a structured learning experience coordinator. There's a plan after break to provide an equity literacy series. The school district is continuing the migration of everything to EduPlanet. We discussed a new process to approve grants outside of the Somerville Education Foundation. This process will continue as our internal review of any independent, for any independent reading books. And we looked at the time that coaches are spending on working with teachers directly and indirectly. The time helping instruction is a major part of how they're utilized, with less than 10% of their time being spent on coverages and duties. We also discussed how supervisors are supporting the learning in each building. Okay, that's it for the report. Motion to approve item 1 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. That is the acknowledgement of the receipt of monthly HIB reports, 4 cases at Vanderveer and 4 at the middle school.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Carlson? Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce?
Yes. Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes.
And motion to approve that items 2 through 3 be moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Number 2 is that the Board of Education acknowledge receipt of the 2 unconfirmed HIB report cases at the high school. Number 3, field trips.
Second.
Mr. Carlson, second. Any discussion? Just gonna get Mr. Carlson's name on this set of minutes as much as we can while he's here. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce?
Sure. Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, buildings and grounds, Mr. Puntillo?
Vanderveer, there was work done on the HVAC system, a water pump needed to be replaced, and the elevator needed, preventative service. In the middle school, they repaired locks, they replaced a water heater, and, preventive maintenance on an elevator. At the high school, they repaired locks, repaired boiler number 2 in the new wing, and the elevator had, preventative maintenance. And in all buildings, all work orders are being done in a timely fashion.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Puntillo? Oh, moving on. Okay, moving on to policy. Ms. Olson's not here today, so I will just make this motion for second reading. Resolved that the Board of Education approve the following policy regulations for a second reading. Policy 9130, committees. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Puntillo? I think so. Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Well, I just wanna make one comment. I think merging some of the responsibilities into, and reducing the amount of committees was a good move.
I do wanna make an additional comment. I think one of the things, well, let's finish this first. Mr. Boyce, and then I'll make a comment on it.
Sure. Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi?
No.
Okay. All right, one of the things that, I think we will try to do is, that if this is approved, is, just survey board members, over the next few weeks about committees that you may be interested in serving on next year with the reconfigure committees. That way, hopefully we can have our committee structure set up a bit sooner than we typically do. You'll notice in the, meeting schedule, we have 2 meetings in January, so our hope is that for the second meeting in January, we can have committees approved. And then, transition more smoothly into, just having fully functional committees by the end of January. Right, so, I think, that's something, again, that Dr. Tien will communicate through Orange Notes and just solicit some information around that for everybody. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Mr. Sergio, athletics and student activities.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President. I just have a few bullet points to go over, not too much, but, we're here a year later, and this is what happens when you blink. So, first thing I wanna say is on behalf of myself and the Athletics and Activities Committee, for all of you, we wish you all the best in the ways that you celebrate the holidays and everyone that you break bread with. We want it safe, happy, and joyous, and restful and recharging for the new year coming up. Mr. President, our next Athletics and Activities Committee meeting, it's gonna be held next Monday on the 13th. I had to make just a slight push out to it from our 6 o'clock meeting. I just pushed it back about 15 minutes. I think mostly everyone did accept that, and that's just to accommodate an ad hoc meeting that'll take place prior to that. I'm furnishing the agenda, so that should be out later this week. I want to provide an update from the last month's athletics report. I know I typically love to go over, and I love to report on our student character builders, athletes, and their commitments in the next stage of education. Thanks to one of my colleagues here,
I wanted to congratulate Devin McKinley. He's going to be living the diamond life for the King's College Lions, I think, so when he moves on. So I want to add him to that list. There are more coming. Typically, we don't see them until later on as the year progresses. But for those that have committed, I want to wish them all the best and congratulations. I also want to add congratulations to all of our teachers of the year. Obviously, as a music lover, I wanted to call out Music's own Matt Krompaski as well. But overall, to all of our curriculum and character educators, it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of what you guys do every day. So congratulations to all of you. Getting to, you know, the pioneer life: swimming, hockey, girls and boys basketball, wrestling for the girls and boys, unified bowling, fencing, and more often running. All the winter clubs are underway, like chess, string, ski, the art club, cosmetology. Thanks, Amanda, for mentioning those as well. They are all off and running. The drama production, the Les Miserables, is off and running again, and also the SMS production of Les Petites Mermaids is that's from Les. That's also, those rehearsals have kicked off. You know, the choir, the concert, the jazz band. It's going to be an action-packed winter season. And I'm going to jump bullet points a bit, because what's going to be a little more exciting about this year is the fact that I talked to Athletic Director Davis prior to this meeting. First things first, he is proud to report that enrollment in middle and high school sports is up about 10% from last year. The middle school has approximately 75 students playing in their sports programs, and the high school is 336. So that's a positive trend that, you know, we're hoping that we're going to see more of coming forward. But also for all these sports activities this year, on a general note, that they will be allowing fans in. However, all those fans, parents that do come in, must honor the school's internal protocols, and obviously those signs and everything will be there with regards to masking and social distancing. But we will be able to watch the games this year, so that's something also to me is a positive trend. I'm going to go to congratulations to Coach Petranco and the boys for overall improvement on their football program in the middle school, and the SMS girls football program as well, placing second overall. They made it all the way to the championship game. It just fell short to North Plainfield. So Tara Marash, it's a great way to, you know, to orient yourself to the program. Something else, and this is, I love to report this. This time of year, and Dan, I'm going to give you credit in the Somerville Education Foundation for everything you guys do. You know, there are two concerts that happen this year that really get you filled with spirit, and one is the Somerville High School Winter Concert, along with the SMS Winter Concert as well. The Somerville Winter Concert will take place on the 16th. The SMS concert, I think, will be on the 23rd this year. Stephen Loretti and his concert and jazz band, they put on one heck of a show. All the songs, as you know, by heart, along with Karen Gorzinski and the choir as well, and some select instruments from Kapansky's band will also be participating. And on December the 21st, if I have the date correctly, 7:30, you know, with the beauty of the easy feeling music of Peter Mayer and his band, complemented by the SHS Chamber Choir, they are going to perform their Stars and Promises tour again. This year's theme is Ring Out the Bells. And what's unique about this year is it will be performed within the walls of the SHS Auditorium, as opposed to not the United Methodist Church, but the United Reformed Church on Main Street. So it's going to be right here within our walls on our home turf. And last but not least, and I thank Tyler Kazar because he loves to provide a very detailed update, and I'm happy to oblige him every single time. Let's talk about robotics. Last month, the team participated in its first competition over 2 years. And what was exciting to see was how well the students, most of whom haven't been in a competition or in a competition for the first time, how well they responded. And they handled it like pros. The turnaround times between the matches to resolve any issues were exemplary, as a functioning robot took the field every single time. They were chosen as the first pick on a third seed alliance where they competed alongside Cold Fusion from Immaculata and Normality Zero from Harrisburg, PA. Next, the Mr. Robotos, I'll call them, focused their attention on the first LEGO League initiative. Teams include the first LEGO League teams, the Cyber Dragons from Somerville Middle School, and the Vandergears from Vanderbilt. So congratulations to those teams and their coaches, Caitlin Cole, Stang, Noel Siumi, and Tristan Miller for having an amazing season as well. So to kick off the real season, which will start on January the 8th, the training sessions are in full force, and after the worldwide kickoff broadcast that starts before then, they are officially get the green light to start working on their 22 build. So I'm always excited to talk about them, and they have an exciting staff. So that is my report, sir. I hope I didn't miss anything, but that's it. Back to you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. Studio. It's good to have you back in person. We're not doing this from the hotel room somewhere, so, thank you.
You didn't even know I was here.
Well, initially, I mean, I'm not used to sitting there, so.
It was the glare.
You're always here, though, so. Ad hoc equity, Ms. Matthews.
There's no report at this time. We will be setting forth dates for next year after the reorganization, and there's a little reorganization with Ms. Sager leaving, and I'll be meeting with Lou Manziano going forward.
Great. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Jess, the Ad hoc Communications Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Kimmick. Our next Communications Committee meeting is scheduled for next Monday, December 13th, 5 p.m. in this room, and our focus at that meeting will be the district website, and if any changes will be recommended to make it more user-friendly.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Jess. All right, moving on to personnel. Dr. Sheehan.
All right, personnel. PS 8, resolved that the Board of Education approve and/or accept the following appointments upon recommendation of Superintendent of Schools. Appointments and salaries contingent upon verified documentation. Number 1, to accept the resignation retirement of the listed individuals. Number 2, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the positions indicated. Number 3, to approve the transfer of the listed individual to the position indicated. Number 4, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the position of coach for Somerville Middle School during the 21-22 school year. Number 5, to approve a paid medical leave of absence for the listed individual. Number 6, to approve a paid maternity leave of absence for Gina Spears. Number 7, to approve the appointment of the listed staff members to conduct after-school social skills groups at Vanderveer School beginning in the week of December 13th. And number 8, to approve the appointment of Michelle Wall, a Centenary University student, to complete her clinical experience and internship at Vanderveer.
Okay. All right. We actually need a first and a second on first. First was Mr. Carlson, second was Mr. Shadil. Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce?
Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes.
For 9 through 12, and district-wide, resolved that the Board of Education approve and/or accept the following appointments upon recommendation of Superintendent of Schools. Appointments and salaries contingent upon verified documentation. Number 9, to accept the resignation and retirement of the listed individual. Number 10, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the position indicated. Number 11, to create the following positions for the 21-22 school year. Number 12, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the positions indicated. Number 13, to approve the appointment of the listed individual to the position of substitute for the 21-22 school year. Number 14, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the position of advisor and supervisor at Somerville High School. Number 15, to approve the appointment of the listed individuals to the position of volunteer at Somerville High School. Number 16, to approve the appointment of the listed staff members to write curriculum during the 21-22 school year. And number 17, to approve an extension to the paid medical leave for Elizabeth Duque, now from November 19th to November 29th.
Okay, we need a first and a second.
First.
Second.
Carlson and Ms. Matthews for the second. Is there any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce?
Yes. Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes on 9 through 13, abstain on 14 and 15, and yes on the rest.
Okay. Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes, with abstentions on 14 and 15.
Mrs. Fabrizi?
Yes, with abstentions on 14 and 15.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyce. Okay, moving on to old business. Are there any old business items that board members would like to bring forth? No? Okay, can I have a motion to close old business?
So moved, sir.
Mr. Sergio,
Second.
Mr. Carlson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to new business. Are there any new business items that board members would like to bring forth? Okay, I have a motion to close new business. Mr. Carlson, have a second, please.
Second.
Ms. Van Horn. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right, now moving on to hearing the public regarding agenda items and non-agenda items. At this time, we invite any members of the public to make public comment. When you do so, please state your name and your address. Getting wait time?
Seeing no movement.
Is there a motion to close public comment? Mr. Carlson?
Second.
Second, Ms. Van Horn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, at this point, the board is going to move into executive session, so resolve that Board of Education move to recess into executive session to discuss 2 confirmed HIP cases, a HIP hearing, a grievance, a legal matter, and matters falling within the attorney-client privilege with respect to these subjects. The minutes of the executive session, to the extent permitted by law, will be made available to the public once issues are resolved, subject to confidential requirements, and it is expected that we may take action upon return. Is
And
that
I
accurate?
apologize, it's 3 confirmed HIP cases. I
Oh.
said 2, but there's
Oh,
actually 3
okay,
listed
3
there.
confirmed HIP cases. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carlson? All right.
You get a valid
Any
three
discussion?
vote.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, at this point, we are going to wish everybody a very happy holiday season. If you're not returning from the meeting, thank you to everybody for your contributions to the meeting. I know this was a long one, but again, there was a lot of important content that was discussed, and we do appreciate that. We would ask that everybody who is going to be remaining just wait outside, and we'll call parties in once we're ready to Okay, we are now live again, so we're coming out of executive session. So can we have a motion, please, to return to public session? So Mr. Carlson, Mr. Sergio, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, as we mentioned, when we went into executive session, we did expect to take action. We have 2 motions that will be entertained by the board right now. The first is going to be read by our board attorney.
That resolution reads as follows. Resolved that the board hereby affirms the finding that case number 2122 3HS heard during this evening's executive session is an unconfirmed case of HIB, and be it further resolved that the parent shall be provided with a written decision informing him of the board's decision per board policy.
Okay, do we have a motion? So Mr. Sergio, second.
Second.
Mr. Carlson. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce, you do roll, please?
Yes, Ms. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo.
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska.
Yes.
Mr. Jess.
Yes.
Mr. Sergio.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick.
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyce, and we have a second motion, I believe, that, Mr. Boyce is gonna read.
Yes. Resolved that the Board of Education accept the following confirmed HIV case reports. 2021-2022:2 VDB, 2021-2022:1 SHS, 2021-2022:2 SHS.
Okay, is there, first on that? Mr. Carlson, second?
Second.
Ms. Van Horn? Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce?
Yeah, I wonder if I should separate these. I'm gonna separate these from the Vanderbilt one. So on the first one,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
yeah, on the first one, I'm just going to do the Vanderveer one. So, Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes.
And now the second one for the 2 SHS, Ms. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Puntillo?
Yes.
Mrs. Kraska?
Yes.
Mr. Jess?
Yes.
Mr. Sergio?
Yes.
Mrs. Van Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmick?
Yes.
Mrs. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyce. And with that, we have reached, the conclusion of our meeting, so is there a motion for adjournment?
So
Motion.
moved.
Oh, yeah, let
That
David.
was,
Give
Dan
it to
Carlson. So are you seconding your own motion?
Sure, why not?
Who's second? And Ms. Matthews, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Okay, we are, adjourned at 10:13. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Have a great holiday season, and please drive carefully.